What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to build a little Node.js command line application to generate random passwords, and we're going to be using a couple different packages which I'll show you in a second, but I just want to give you a quick demo before we get started. So it's called passgen, and we're going to create a symlink at the end so that we have this global passgen command. I'm in the folder right now, but I don't have to be. I could run this from anywhere, and if I run it, you'll see that we get this nice output with some colors. It says generated password, and by default it's going to be just a random 8-character password with letters, numbers, and symbols. And it just says password copied to clipboard. We're going to use a package called Clipboard to do that. And we can also add on options to this. Like, let's say we want to change the length. We can do -- length, and let's set it to 20. So that'll give us a longer password. If I add onto this dash, I can either do NN or I can do --no--numbers. If I run that, you'll see that it'll just give me a password with letters and symbols. I can also say no symbols, --no. Actually, I can use the shorthand of NS, and now you can see it's just letters. And we can also run the help command, or the help option. So if I do passgen-h, it'll show me what it is, simple password generator. We can look at the version, the length, which I just showed you, no numbers, no symbols. We can also save to a file if we want to save these passwords. So let's try that. We'll do passgen, let's do -- length, and we'll set that to 20, and then -- save. Okay, so now you can see at the end it says password saved to passwords.txt. And I should have that in here, and let's just take a look at that. We'll do cat passwords.txt, and you can see that it's in the file. If I run passgen again, let's run it a couple times. We'll do one with 10. Okay, and then if I want to look in that file again, you'll see that they all got saved to that file on a separate line. Okay. So pretty simple program, but I think that you'll learn quite a bit here. And this is very beginner friendly, so even if you're brand new to Node.js, you shouldn't have any issues. So Commander is what we're going to be using mainly for the options that are being passed in and the nice help option and all that. So you can check out the documentation. I'll put links to the GitHub for each of these. So that's Commander. Chalk we're going to be using for the colored output. It's similar to the colors package, which I've used in a lot of different courses and tutorials. And then Clipboard we're going to be using to be able to copy the password to our clipboard. All right, and then we'll also use like the FS module and the path module to be able to save the password to a file. All right, so that's it. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so I have VS Code open and just an empty folder called passgen, and I'm going to be using my integrated terminal in VS Code. Of course, you can use this if you're using VS Code, or you can use your regular Linux, Mac, Windows terminal, whatever it is you're using. So let's start off by doing an npm init, which is going to create a package.json. Now the package name is going to be the same as the folder, which for me is passgen, and this is going to be the name of the command that we're going to run at the end when we make a symlink. So I'm going to keep it as passgen. Version, description, we'll say simple password generator, and entry point, we can enter through all this, and author, you can put your own name here. We'll say MIT license. Okay, so that creates a package.json. Now we just want to install our dependencies, which are going to be commander, chalk, and clipboard. Okay, so those are the 3 dependencies that we want to install. And then we can go ahead and create an index.js. That's what I'm going to call the main file here. And we're going to get into commander in a second, but I just first want to talk about commands and options or arguments. So right now, to run the file, we would do node and then the name of the main file, which is index, and it's not going to do anything. We have no code. Ultimately, we're going to be able to do passgen for our command when we add our symlink. Now I just want to talk about if we wanted to add a command like, let's say, generate, like that. So how do we access this? We can do that without Commander. although Commander gives us a ton of different tools and just a much easier way of dealing with arguments and commands. But I just want to show you before we get into Commander, on the process object in Node.js, we have an argv array. Actually, I'm going to console.log this. And we'll go ahead and run our file. Let's just run it with node index. Okay, and by default, you're going to have these two items in this array and their paths. One is to node, one is to the index page. And if we were to add an extra argument here, like generate, that's going to get added to that array. If I were to add another one like hello, that will also get added. So you can kind of manually just check for that. Like if process.argv, it's an array. If we'll check the third one, which would be 2, and we'll say if that is equal to generate, then we'll just console log generated. And if we run this, you'll see it'll spit out generated. So you can check for extra options, arguments with this process.argv without using commander. But if they're out of order, or if you want something like, length, this is something we're going to do, length equals 10, you have to be able to get this value of 10. So commander lets us do that really easily. So let's go ahead and clear this up. We'll clear this up and let's bring in commander. So we're going to create a variable called program and set this to require commander. And then we can take that program object, and there's different methods we can call. So the first one I'm going to do is version, and we can add a version number for our application. I'm just going to do 100. We can add a description. So for description, I'm going to say simple password generator, and then we just need to add parse on the end of this. So if I run node index now, if I run the file, we're not going to see any output. However, I should be able to do -h for help. And what that does is it shows us the description, which is simple password generator, and then any options that we can use with this command, or in this case, this file. So h or help, or -- help, we just did. We can also do the version, so $V will give us the version. Now, we want to add options onto this, but first I want to show you how we can actually create commands. Because what we want is just in the end to just do passgen, which will just run the file. However, you can have commands, like let's say we had a generate command. So to create those with commander, I'm actually going to put the parse down here. So we'll do program.command, and then whatever you want that command to be, let's do generate. And then what you can do is add on an action, which takes in a function. Okay, and in this function, we could do whatever we want. Let's just do console log, we'll say generated. Did we spell that right? Generated. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run node index generate, and we get generated. So it gives us a much easier, cleaner way to do this. Now, like I said, we're not going to want extra commands. I just want to run the file, but we are going to have options for things like the length, if we want to save the file, save the password into a file or not. So what we can do is add on an option or options. Okay, now, like I said, we're not using a command or an action. We just want to get the option so we can actually get rid of this. And the first option I'm going to add is length. So we want to pass in here -- length, and then a description. So let's say length of password. Okay, so just by doing that, if I run help again, so -h, we should see the length option. And if we want to add an alias like -l, we can just go right here and do -l, comma. And if I run help again, we'll see this -l, length of password. Now, the length is something that we actually want to pass a value in. We could leave it like this if it was a Boolean, such as the save. When we do our save and some of the other options, those will be Booleans, but we want a value for this. So what we do is we just add some angle brackets, and we could call this whatever we want. I'm just going to call this length because that's what it is. That's what we're putting in. So let's go ahead and say node index. We'll just do help for now, and it'll show you the value that you can put in here. Actually, let's say number. That makes more sense. Yeah, so length, and then you put a number in. Now, to actually get that, because right now if I do node index dash dash length equals 10, I mean, obviously it doesn't do anything. We have no output. But to get it, we can console log on program. We want to call OPTS, ops. So if I console log that, let's run node index length 10, and you'll see we get an object with our options. In this case, we have one option of length, which is equal to 10. Now, if I run node index without the length, it's just an empty object. I do want to have a default though, so what we can do is just add that as a third argument here into option. So let's do a default of 8. So now even if I run node index without length, it's going to be length 8 by default. So that's our first option. The next one I want to have is if we want to save the file or not, or save the password. So let's actually put this on a new line here and parse on a new line, and I'm going to copy this option down, and let's say -s and then --save. So you could use either one of these. Now it's not going to take a value, it's going to be a Boolean, so we want to get rid of that. For the description, we're going to say save password to passwords.txt, which is the file I want to save it to, and then no default here. Okay, it should be false by default. If I run node index with nothing on it, you can see we still have length, but save doesn't exist. If I do --save, then we're going to get save true. Okay. Now the other two that I want to add are if we want symbols or numbers included in the generated password, and for those we actually want those to be true by default because we want symbols and numbers by default. So let's do right here, if we do no dash and then numbers, that'll actually make it true by default. And we'll do a shorthand of, let's say, NN. And then for the description, let's do remove numbers. Okay, so let's save that, and if we run, let's just do node index, you'll see numbers is going to be true, and that's what I want by default because I want numbers to be included in the password. However, if we do either --, no dash numbers, or just -NN, you'll see that numbers is now false. And I want to do the same for symbols, so we'll copy this down, and let's say remove symbols, and we'll call this, we'll do NS. All right, so just running node index, those are both going to be true. Now we want to do the actual functionality for generating a password. And we want to get all of the values for length save, no numbers, no symbols. So those are all in this program ops. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this console log, and we're going to destructure from that the length save, and then it's going to be just numbers and symbols. I know here we have no numbers, no symbols, but that just means that it's going to be true by default. So we're actually getting numbers and symbols from here. Okay, and just to kind of prove that, let's do node index, and we'll do we'll console log just to show you the numbers and symbols, and we'll run that, and you can see that those are true, and we want them true by default. So now that we have those values, what I want to do is have a function to create a password. Let's put a comment here. We'll say get generated password. Okay, and this is going to go in it's going to be a function in a separate file. So let's do const, we'll call this generated password. That's where we're going to store it, and it's going to come from a function called create password that we haven't created yet, but we will in a second. And let's pass in here the length, and it's also going to take in if it has numbers and if it has symbols. We don't need to pass in save. That's something we're going to do later on. All right, so let's create this create password. Actually, let's just console log You know what, since we're using console log so much, let's just go up here and say console log, set that to console.log. And then out here, we'll say output generated password. We don't really need these comments, but just in case anyone needs them. So we're gonna log generated password, which right now isn't gonna work because this function hasn't been created. So I'm gonna put this in a separate file. So I'm gonna have a folder called utils, and inside utils, let's say create password.js. And here we're gonna have a function called create password, which will be an arrow function, and it's going to take in length, it's going to take in has numbers, which is a boolean, and it's going to take in has symbols, which is a boolean. And we're going to set defaults to these. So has symbols true, has numbers true, and then length will be 8 by default. Actually, we can make that a number. Now, we don't really need defaults here because we have defaults from our commands, and that's what's being passed in here, but I'm going to add them anyway. And then we need a set of characters to choose from, so I'm going to just paste this in here. So we have alpha, which is going to be just all the uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. And then inside the function, what we'll do is initialize characters. So we'll say initialize chars to alpha. So initially, it's just going to have all letters. And then remember, they can choose if they want numbers or symbols. So let's say has numbers. If that's true, then, so we're just using a ternary here. So if that's true, then we're going to take the characters and we're going to append onto that all the numbers. And we're going to do else, then don't add anything if has numbers is false. Same thing with symbols. So this is going to be symbols, and we want to check has symbols. All right, and then what we'll do here is for now just return our characters, and it's going to be just all of these right now. But let's go into index.js and bring that file in. So we'll go right here, let's say const create password, set that to require, and we want to go /utils/create password. Okay, and then that's going to get set. This is going to get set to the return value of that, and then we're going to log it. So let's say node index create password is not a function. That's because I forgot to export it. So in the create password file, we have to module.exports create password. All right, let's try that again. And there we go. So what it does is it just gives us all the letters from alpha, all the numbers, and then all the symbols by default. Now this chars here, what we want to do is pass this into another function called generate password. So we want to pass that in along with the length. And then what we'll do is create that right here. So I'm just breaking it up into two functions. You can do it all together if you want, but just choosing to do it this way. So let's say length and characters. Okay. And then what we can do is initialize our password to be just nothing. And then we're going to use a for loop. And this for loop, we're going to set I to 0. And then we're going to say as long as I is less than the length that's passed in. And then we want to increment by 1. Okay, so just a standard for loop. And then we'll take, on each iteration, we'll take password and we'll append to it a random character. Okay, and that could be just letters. If if both of these are false, it could be with numbers and symbols, or just one or the other. So what we'll do is we'll take our characters and we're going to use char at, which basically will just get a certain character at a certain position, and that position is going to be random. So inside here, we're going to round down with math.floor and then use math.random. And that's just going to be multiplied by the chars.length. Okay, so that will just give us a random character. And then after the for loop, we want to return password. Okay, and then that's going to get put, we'll get that here, and we're going to return that from generate password. So now it should work. Let's run node index. Okay, generate password is not defined. Sorry, this should be generate password. The function name is generate password. I just called this variable that we get from create password, I called that generated password. All right, so now you'll see when I run node index, we get a random 8-character password with numbers, letters, and symbols. Now I can add my options on here, like let's say -- length, let's set it to 20, and we get a longer one. If I add -NN, it won't have any numbers, it just has letters and symbols. If I do -NS with NN, it's just letters. All right, so our options that we pass in are all working correctly. Now the output is just the password. I want to change that up a little bit, make it a little nicer. So we're going to use chalk for that. So let's go up here and let's bring in chalk. Call this chalk. Okay, and then let's go down to where we're outputting right here. And I'm going to add inside log, let's do chalk.blue. And I'm going to have a message here that just says, or like a label that says generated password, : Okay, and so that'll be blue. And then the actual password, I want it to be bold. So I'm going to use chalk.bold and just wrap that. Okay, so now if we go down and do node, let's just do node index. We'll do length 20. And we get a blue generated password label with a bold password. And I also want to just, I want to copy it to the clipboard. So that's where clipboardy comes in. So let's just bring that in. So we'll say clipboardy. And this is really simple. We just need to run clipboardy, and there's a method called write sync, and we're going to do that right after where we generate the password. We'll say copy to clipboard, and we can do that by doing clipboardy.write sync and pass in our generated password. And then let's have a message that says it's to the clipboard. So we'll say chalk.yellow. And we'll just have a message that said password copied to clipboard. All right, so let's test that out. I'm just gonna clear this. We'll run that again so you can see the message there. And now if I were to do a command V, it pastes in the password. It gets copied to my clipboard. All right, cool. So let's see, the last thing that we're going to want to do is have the option to save the password to a file. So let's go right above or right below where we generate the password. Let's say save to file. However, we only want this to save if the save flag or save option was added. So we'll say if save, then let's call a function called save password and pass in our generated password. Now save password doesn't exist. I'm going to put that in another file just like we did with create password, just to clean things up. So let's say save password and function save password, and let's go create that in utils, save password.js, and we're going to want to bring in a couple things. We want the fs module, which is just a Node.js built-in module to use the file system. And then we also want path to deal with file paths. And then we're going to need OS, which is a module to just deal with some of the operating system properties. And then also chalk, because I want to have an output that basically just says, it's been saved to a file. So now that we've done that, let's create our function. So this is going to be called save password, and it's going to take in the password. And before I forget, like I always do, let's module exports save password. Okay, Now we're going to be using the fs module, so we're going to do fs open, and basically what we want to do is save the password to a file called passwords.txt, and this will also create the file if it doesn't exist. Now the first argument to pass in is the path, or I should say the location of the file, which I'm going to use path.join to find. So basically we're going to go from the current directory, which we can use _dir name, and then second argument is going to be .. because we want to go up one level, because right now we're in utils, and then the name of the file, which is going to be passwords.txt. Okay, and then we want to pass in, after this first ending parentheses, we're going to add an A, because we want to append. We don't want to just overwrite the last password. I mean, you can do that if you want, but I'd like to have a list of passwords. And then the next one is the permissions. We'll do 666, and then the callback function, because this is asynchronous. All right, and then this function takes in event and then an ID. So that will open it. Now we want to write to it, so we're going to use fs.write, and we'll pass in the ID, whatever we want to write to the file, which is going to be the password. Now I also want to have a new line character, and instead of doing /n, I'm going to use the OS module that I brought in, which has an EOL, an end of line property. That way it doesn't matter which operating system you're on, it should create the new line. And then after that we just want to pass in null, and then the character set, so UTF, actually it should be UTF-8, and then finally we have the function. All right, and then in here we're just going to close, so fs.close the handle, or the ID, and then that has a callback, and then we're just going to console log, and we're going to use chalk here. Let's do chalk green. I mean, you can choose whatever style you want, and it's just going to say password has, or let's say password saved to passwords.txt, and that's it. All right, so if I just do node index, it's just going to generate and copy it to the clipboard. However, if I do node index -- save, you can see it says password saved to passwords.txt, and over here it actually created the file and saved the password to it. If I do it again, if I run node index with save, you'll see it'll go on the next line and it'll save it again. And I can add, if I change the length here to, let's say 30, it'll generate it and save it to the file. All right, so I mean, there's quite a bit you could do to add on to this. You could add a command to clear all the passwords from the file and things like that. You could even save to a database. There's a lot of things you could do to kind of experiment and learn. But that's pretty much it for the functionality. So the last thing I want to do is just add a Symlink, and that's as simple as just doing, actually we have to go to our package.json first. And in here we're going to add, let's go right under main, and we want to add prefer global, and we want to set that to true. And we're going to be able to run this from anywhere. And then we just want to set bin, bin. We're going to set that to the main file, which is ./index.js. Okay, now that we've done that, we should be able to create a Symlink by just doing npm link. Okay, so now I should be able to just run passgen, or not. Let's see. Const program equals require. What did I mess up here? Oh, we forgot to add at the top here. We actually have to do a shebang, a hash and bang, and then /user/bin/env and then node. Forgot about that. All right, so let's try it again. Passgen. There we go. So it works. Passgen -- length 20, and let's do -- save. There we go. It gets saved to that file. All right, and you can keep this on your machine if you ever need to just generate a password, so you can save it in the file. I know there's better programs out there to do this, LastPass and all that, but the point of this video isn't really what we built, it's what we did to build it, and hopefully it gives you some ideas on using Commander for different things. There's also there's other modules or other packages we can use, like Inquirer, which will prompt you for questions and so on. I think I did a video maybe 2 years ago on that. We built a little customer management system. You can check that out if you want. But that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.